Subscribe.
My name is Jason Shurka. I have the privilege of working with an organization, a clandestine, undercover, underground organization known as TLS, otherwise known as the Light System. It's all about how to have a finger in certain places to influence things and make things move, to be able to beat the monster from within. It's understanding that we have the potential within. We have the ability to do what all the great leaders and religious leaders and spiritual leaders have done in the past. A caterpillar transforms and metamorphosizes into a butterfly. That's basically shapeshifting. We call that natural. So when a human being can do something like that, for whatever reason, we call it supernatural, and it's only because we're living subnatural lives. The Bible never caused war. The religious leaders, the people that started spreading those messages through their own corrupted lens, were the ones that caused war. And right now we're going through the process of unwinding and untangling that mess, energetically speaking, to eventually get to the same point that we were at thousands of years ago, which is one world, one life, love for all, compassion and unity. That's what the age of love is, and that's where they're trying to bring us to. So the reason why TLS works with these beings is because it's all bringing back universal awareness, bringing us all together. Time and space doesn't exist in the same way that it does from that perspective, from that awareness, from that consciousness. So it's a completely different way of doing things, and it starts with awareness. It's something that's beyond the laws of physics as we know them in application today. The craft becomes an extension of the operator's consciousness, and that's how they're going those distances and those speeds. I know it sounds like it's out of a movie, but these are real things. My name is Jason Shurka. Many of you may know me as the founder of Unified TV and Unified Healing. But there's a very, very exciting part of my life that I want to dive into, that I want to share with all of you. That's the fact that I have the privilege of working with an organization, a clandestine, undercover, underground organization with incredible intentions known as TLS, otherwise known as the Light System. What you're about to hear over the next few episodes may blow your mind. It's going to challenge your belief systems. It's going to break them down, and that's okay. My job is not to convince you. My job is not to persuade you. My job is to share what I've been asked to share with the world. And what you do with the information you're about to hear is completely up to you and your own free will.
There's lots of different ways to describe divine intervention. Some would say premonitions. Some would say an ability to travel forward in time. Some would also say that maybe events had been pre-planned, so it wasn't some extrasensory power that allowed people to foresee the future. They already knew it. You said that Ray told you that COVID was coming, the fires in Australia, the fires in Maui, so many other things. What was it?
When you say what was it, what do you mean?
What was it? Was it a premonition? Was it a plan? Was it time travel? How did he know all of these things with such amazing accuracy?
So I would say on Ray's level, right? Let's talk about different tiers and levels. On Ray's level, no, he's not at a level to do something like that, not to my knowledge at least. So even he'll say, I'm not a prophet. I just got the information from my superiors. Now the question is, where do they get their information? How do they do that? And that's where intervention comes in. So they intervene in many, many different ways, but intervention, interference is a sticky subject when it comes to the light side of everything that's being done in the world. Because if you take away free will from a human being by intervening to a level that will remove that free will, you're actually doing humanity a disservice. So that's why you also can't go and stop everything. There are rules call it like universal laws. I don't know all of them when it comes to what's allowed and what's not, but I can give you an example. If there's election fraud, they're not allowed to interfere. If there's going to be a nuclear disaster moving forward, they're allowed to interfere. That's why you see extraterrestrial life ever since Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Suddenly, things started changing. They started shutting down nuclear missile bases. They started interfering with nuclear energy to begin.
What's that finite difference then? Is it more about like protection of the planet?
No, it's more, from my understanding, right? I can only give you what I understand, and I have my own limitations. But from what I do understand, the reason why you'd be able to go and interfere with something nuclear speaking is because take an atomic bomb, a nuclear bomb. That's not just impacting planet Earth. You're now impacting interdimensionally. You're impacting something on a much larger scale because, in a way, a nuclear weapon, an atomic bomb, is also a form of scalar energy. It emits something in the scalar field and accesses and taps into the scalar field, which is literally faster than the speed of light. That means that its impacts can impact something, 10 light years, a billion light years, a trillion light years away, because in the quantum realm, time and distance don't matter anymore. So it's an interdimensional effect, which I believe is why they're able to come and now interfere, because now it's impacting something beyond the planet. Now, in some cases, there are things like the Holocaust, world wars. We have to ask ourselves, why is that happening? Why aren't they stopping something like that? And then we'll speak about what they did stop. But why aren't they stopping something like a world war or the Holocaust? And the answer is going to be very, very difficult. I'm going to tell you that from the start because it was difficult for me as well. But I get it. The more I sat with it, I understand it. The Holocaust, World War I, World War II, who was it a creation of? Us. We did it. We followed in those footsteps. We said, yes, let's do it.
We allowed it to happen anyway.
Say it again?
At worst, we allowed it to happen.
Which means that it's our responsibility. It's a reflection of who we are. The Holocaust is a reflection of who we are. World War I, all these things, they're a reflection of who we are and what we allowed to happen. Our enabling process is enough to make it happen. So in that way, if TLS was to come and say, okay, we're going to stop all the events leading up to that and just crush it from the top down, they know that that's not going to change anything, because it's almost like going to India and saying, here's $100 billion. Well, if you don't change the poverty consciousness that's going on over there, and I was there back in February, I thought money can fix that problem. Money cannot fix that problem. Nothing can fix the problem other than the thing that created it, which is the consciousness and the awareness of the individuals.
So you're saying they analyze these situations and they're like, just stopping it isn't going to stop it, because if Holocaust doesn't happen, then XYZ will happen. Humanity will out and something else.
Yes, let's go to individuals today. Forget about the Holocaust. Come today. There are individuals in power, and I have no problem naming names. Dr. Fauci, Bill Gates, Elon Musk. There are individuals that are doing things that on some level you could say they're great. On another level, there's a very, very big problem with what they're doing. Now, whether it's intentional or unintentional, I personally think it's a little bit of both, but that's my opinion. Some people say, well, why not just take out the Rothschild family, the $1 trillion family that do a lot of harm to this planet, not good? And the answer is, again, because they will be replaced.
By another Rothschild doing another.
It could be another this, another that. We need to change it from the base. The point of TLS is not to do things for us. The point of TLS is not to save humanity. Nothing outside of humanity can save humanity. We're responsible for saving ourselves. They help guide along the way. Their goal is to get us to this age of love, if you want to call it that, a beautiful era for humanity as a whole, with no division and no nonsense and no war, greed, or corruption. And that we're going to get ourselves to inevitably. The question is, how much damage is going to happen along the way? And their job is to mitigate as much damage along the way while still allowing us to learn our lessons.
Okay, let me ask you a question then, because that resonates, but there's also some instances where that doesn't quite fit. So I just finished a movie, We Are Not Alone, and in that movie I interviewed Jacques Vallée and Paula Harris, who've done a lot of work on the Trinity Project. For those that don't know, the Trinity bomb, Trinity was the place where the first atom bomb was exploded, and many people believe that that's what alerted the extraterrestrials to us and got them to start visiting us with more frequency. That bomb also went on to kill, I think, 300,000 Japanese people in 2 cities. not to mention the destruction that it did to the planet, and to the scalar frequency. Why didn't they stop that one?
It's a good question. I don't know the answer. Forget that. There's been 2,000 atomic bombs that have gone off with testing. It's not just Hiroshima and Nagasaki. It's not just that. There's been all over the place. So again, I can't answer if I don't know. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Interesting.
If I don't know, I can't answer.
So going back to the COVID story, just because it was something that I experienced, so many of us experienced, and lockdown was painful, you know, in particular if you were in Melbourne, Australia, it was really bad. Locked in from 8 p.m, not allowed to leave your home until 9. And even when you could leave, you could only travel 2.5 miles from your own home. It was a lockdown to the extreme, and it happened for nearly 9 months. Send us all crazy. So do you think the sacrifice that we had to make when we were in lockdown, all the mental health issues, the suicides, all the shit that we all went through, do you think that that was worth it for what was gained from this mission?
Well, it would have happened anyways. All they did was take advantage of what was already occurring. Does that make sense?
Right, so COVID was happening anyway.
They're saying, we understand that they're about to do lockdowns from date X to date Y. Let's do something while we can to turn this into a positive situation.
They made it an opportunistic
Turning
moment.
lemons into lemonade.
So what other divine interventions did TLS have planned?
In terms of what they've done in the past?
No, in terms of what's coming up. Like, are you privy, or has Ray or anyone else been told of any future things that might happen?
Well, I can tell you, okay, go to divine intervention. The Rothschild family infiltration, that's divine intervention. That was a 12-month operation that was going on in order for Ray and others. But I'm focusing on Ray because he's my main contact for that operation as well. So he went in, had to befriend this man. We're talking about Nathan Rothschild or whatever his name is, to go and stop certain things from happening, specifically economically speaking. Okay, so digital currencies, programmable money, how they're going to implement and apply that in our society and our economy. They're doing their best right now to stop those things, and they've succeeded to an extent so far. But it's still, it's an operation that ended with the Rothschild family in terms of Ray's affiliation. It's still ongoing outside of Ray's affiliation with other agents going on.
When you're saying infiltrated, are you saying that like he literally is playing the long game and befriending this man and playing golf with him and getting into his inner sanctum and then somehow being able to influence him? Or is he influencing him or whoever using some of these skills and abilities that you've spoken about?
His cover, half of his cover was his spiritual console. That's how he got in. And to get past all their people, that's where TLS and Ray will use transducing. Again, that whole form of basically manipulation, only for a positive purpose, to get in, to get a job done.
Could you explain a little bit for the viewers what transducing?
Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit for the viewers what transducing actually is?
It's basically using certain hand movements, words. I don't know how to do it. I was never taught the technique, but it's been done to me. That's how, for example, remember I told you about Torat HaChalomot, the knowledge and mysticism of dreams. That's how they'll go inside and influence certain things. It's by tapping into your subconscious to make you move in certain ways, to make you do things, to make you forget things. Many, many different applications of what it would be used for. But again, it can be used in a very negative way. That's why it's held under guard. But in short, it's certain hand movements, touching you in certain parts of the body, and manipulating certain energy frequencies and vibrations in your body to help you change the way you would normally do something.
I saw a movie once, Inception. I'm sure you've seen it about. So is it a sort of similar thing to that, where you're able to go into someone's dreams and consciousness and implant in that movie, it was to implant a thought that just was so unshakable that eventually the mind would evolve it to a point of making someone make a decision.
Yes, but I'm pretty sure in Inception they're hooked up to something, no?
Yeah, no, they were hooked up to something to keep them dreaming.
Okay.
But the idea was to go into their consciousness.
So
and
think of that without the physical hardwired technology of any sort. I can go to sleep, Ray can come and influence or put a thought into my mind. For example, after he did the fetal position technique to me to, read my energy in a way, if you want to call it that. After he completed that, he told me to go home and go to sleep, not to use my phone, and to write down my dreams the next morning. I went home, I went to sleep. I remembered the most vivid dream. I was like Mowgli in the jungle with all these animals. It was unbelievable. I'll never forget how I was running on the trunk. It was amazing. A broken tree trunk, all these beautiful animals, everything. And I call him and I say, okay, so, and he says, what'd you dream about? And I tell him this whole story and he's like, and I tell him the whole story. And I said, that's all I remember. He said, what about the alligator? And suddenly I remembered that whole part of my dream of this alligator in a swamp. I think it might have even been two, I don't remember, but this alligator in a swamp and this whole story. I have the whole thing written down in my journal. And he's now telling me what the alligator was doing in my dream. And I remembered everything that happened in my dream. Suddenly, you know when somebody activates something from like, you wake up, somebody says something and you're like, oh, I just remembered my dream. It was like that. Only he was now telling me what happened in my own dream. It was unbelievable. That's a form of it, if you want to call it.
I got to tell you something really trippy, Jason, really trippy. And he can corroborate this because I told him about it a few hours ago. This morning, I was dreaming. You know, I only got five hours sleep last night. I had insomnia, you know, anticipation of doing this with you. And I had the most vivid dream, and it was about you. And it was that you came to my house, and we were in my pool, but my pool was absolutely enormous. And I was being chased by an alligator, and you were there. And that is just so weird, right?
When was that?
This morning, 20 minutes before you arrived at my home. And it was so vivid, I told him about it because it was like this dream, oh my God.
That's funny.
And yeah, and here we are. But, you know, that kind of makes me think, has there ever been a time in your life, you know, since you were 20, where you were on one path and then all of a sudden you were on another path? Similar to what I explained to you before about how I was entrepreneuring and then all of a sudden here I am in Hollywood, right? Do you think maybe that was one of those moments of, of inception, you know, a moment where maybe they interceded, planted that seed for you to open up Unified and to move into that world of energy healing and all of those things?
Yeah, I would even go back to...
You said yourself, it was just so foreign to what you were doing.
I would even go back to, you know, the books that I've written. One of the books that I wrote, it was the second book. It's called The Language of Energy. I went to Costa Rica. I was on a silent retreat for about a week, and this whole thing just downloaded and flowed through me. And it's now
from nowhere, just
from somewhere. I just don't know.
No, but I mean, you hadn't been reading heaps of books about the topic,
No, and it was just like boom, boom, boom. Suddenly, once I got back from Costa Rica, and I'm like, I got a book. I just wrote this whole thing, and I'm telling you, I didn't write it. It just flowed through me. They gave me a piece of rays of light that was basically the same thing. And I've never read
like a slice of it and put it.
It was crazy. And then I understood there was something being tapped into or somebody was influencing me, which I'm sure that there was an influence there because you can't write a book exactly like another book without knowing the other book exists unless there's some sort of interference here. It just doesn't happen.